And good afternoon, Jamie Shell with Avery Journal-Times here with our Viking Coaches Corner, brought to you by every week, of course, by the Big Mike's Coffee Shop located on Pinola Street in Newland. Mike and Jackie Nelson, we appreciate them and their sponsorship of football, and as well as their hospitality to us during basketball season, where we're normally able to go over there and get our coffees and get our lattes and get all the fine opportunities for drinks and food that they have available. Unfortunately, Mother Nature is preventing us from doing that this week, so we certainly will look forward to getting back there. We just appreciate their support and all their help. Of course, they have a mobile truck. That coffee needs, breakfast needs, lunch. They serve lunch now, so definitely please check out Big Mike's Coffee Shop for breakfast or lunch, as well as just your needs for coffee and other items in that respect. Also appreciate Kenny Johnson and Johnson Entertainment Group and the staging group. As I've said before, Kenny is a Renaissance man. He's the red light guy, right? He's the one that sets up the red lights in the gym. So we appreciate that. It gives a certain ambiance to our pregame lineups. I know the players enjoy that and love that as well. But Kenny can help you with staging needs. He'll do everything from deliver the mail to setting up the stage to playing the music for you. He can do it all. So we appreciate Kenny and his abilities and his contributions and his commitment to athletics at Avery High School, especially his commitment to the basketball programs. And we definitely thank Kenny for being part of our broadcast as well here. Here with Coach John Gage, head coach of the Viking boys basketball team. And coach, this matchup the last week and this week been kind of good news when we've come together to talk. We've had a couple of wins. We talked about the previous meeting last week. You came in last week with Madison down at Madison, Owen at home, two teams you had lost to in the first round of conference play, coming back and getting victories this time around. Can you just speak a little bit about, just in general, your thoughts about how the team played in those two wins and maybe kind of ways you all approach those contests to kind of learn from lessons from those first times around?
Yeah, I think I've been very pleased with the way we've approached the second half of this conference slate. I think there's been a notable difference in pretty basic, the effort and the energy that we've played with, and it all kind of starts with that. And it's really no more complicated than the energy we're playing with on the defensive end of the court is what's really sort of set the tone for us. We haven't necessarily been scoring at the rate that I would like for us to score at, but I've said before, my favorite saying when it comes to basketball is that defense travels to every gym. And if you come in with a mindset that you are going to keep the other team from scoring, then you give yourself opportunity to win the ball game. And I really am pleased with the effort we've put out on the court defensively. We've gone against some really good scores. Gavin Galt and Asante Martin from Owen are two of the better scores in this part of the state. And I thought, Asante still put up 20 against us, but it was a difficult 20, and it was not comfortable. And I think that we have really stepped up on that end of the court, and that's been the difference maker for us. We always had guys that have the ability to score, even in a tight game, can get a basket when they need one. But I didn't think our defensive energy the first half of the conference slate was what it needed to be. And so credit to the guys, they've really stepped up on that end, and that's what we're going to need moving forward.
With that game at Madison, the defense, you limited Madison to just 38 points. Yeah. And you have a kid in Gavin Galt that can put up 25 to 30 himself in a given night. And you limit him just to 14. He only had 3 in the first half, one shot, a three-pointer he made in the second quarter. But you held Madison just to 2 buckets in the first quarter. You held them just to no more. Of course, fourth quarter, they tried to make their little comeback, but you guys, were able to really shoot the ball well at the free throw line in that final quarter to kind of keep that lead padded. But really, it wasn't like you were running away from that game, even though you're playing really solid defense. It seemed like shots maybe weren't quite as falling either. You maybe credit Madison's defense to that as well. But, 51-38, the final score in that game down there in Marshall. But can you just speak a little bit about just the defensive pressure you put on the Patriots just to really make them uncomfortable, it looked like, more than anything else?
Credit goes to, 5 guys have got to be engaged every possession to really have a truly great, consistent defensive approach. But I want to give a lot of credit to Oak Markland, who I think has just really played phenomenal defense in the past 2 games. He's drawn the assignment of guarding Gavin Galt, and then he guarded Asante as well. And if you look back at Asante's stat line, most of the buckets he got were not on Oak. They were either in transition or on free throws, but he's done a phenomenal job in the past 2 games, and he's really sort of, yeah, I can't speak enough to the unselfishness and the team first sort of mentality of his approach to those 2 games, because he really did not care whether he was scoring, what his role was on the offense. Was still able to contribute on that end of the court, but really his approach was all about the guy that I'm guarding is not going to beat us. And we kind of went in with that mindset in both of those 2 games, that those 2 guys, somebody else was going to have to beat us in those games. And credit to Oak on that. And not just Oak, other guys contributed as well. We were really heavily helping the ball whenever one of those 2 particular guys had the ball. We had to send bodies at it to discourage any kind of drives, make them pass out, and then scramble back and get in rotation. But so just as a team, we did a really good job, particularly in that Madison game, of giving them uncomfortable shots, making them get into looks that were not necessarily their primary or even secondary action they were trying to get, but really making them sort of force shots they weren't necessarily comfortable with. And also, finishing off the possession by getting defensive rebounds so that we're able to get out in transition to go. So it was really everybody really selling out on that end of the court. And, absolutely we did the job. Like you said, we weren't scoring the way we wanted to. We never scored particularly well on Madison's goals for every reason, which is encouraging since the conference tournament is there. But But I mean, again, defense travels. So I'm very encouraged by our defensive effort, and particularly in that game.
Yeah, and you have 2 guys with double figures. Of course, Hank, he was able to get his. He only had 7 in the first half, but he came up big for you there in that matchup too with 20. And then having to guard Galt the majority of the time, he scored 10 still. So he almost negated Gavin's offensive output. But then you had Landon come through with 8 points. You had Jackson coming through with 8 points. And of course you had Jackson, you had Nick, you had JJ, all kind of running along with Oak, Gavin, and some Hank as well. So you seemed like with these top scoring guys, you guys are doing such a good job of rotating and getting extra bodies in to stay fresh. And I imagine that's something you've got to spend a lot of time on in practice.
For sure. Yeah. It's, we very much, so much of our practice is dedicated to defense. And that's sort of what we want to hang our hat on. We obviously, we talk about how we want to play fast and we want to score points and everything, but it all comes down to the defense in the court, because really the defensive effort is what creates those transition opportunities and being able to get out and play fast. We talk about, our defensive game plan is different from game to game, depending on who we're playing. But just how important that effort is and being connected, and all 5 guys being connected, and that's why things like talking and communicating are so important. I know, like whenever I put my practice plan together, all my assistant coaches practice plan I have written on there. It'll be in all caps, talk with an exclamation point. And that's not me telling my assistant coaches to talk. It's telling them to just reiterate throughout practice how important communicating is on the defensive end of the court. And I thought that the guys were definitely up to the challenge in those past 2 games. And you mentioned guys like JJ and Nick and Jackson, who are so critical for that defensive end of the court, because they're guys that can move and guys that just have really good defensive instincts and can take a little bit of pressure off of Oak, who's got a very difficult job that he's been asked to do, by having teammates that are there to be able to help and to be active. That takes a little load off of Oak, who's carrying a lot of weight. And then it also helps when you got big guys on the back line like Landon Liner and Blaine Kirkpatrick, who are difficult to get shots over on the back end. That can help a lot of things as well.
We move forward to the game on Thursday with Owen. Of course, that's a game that was moved up a day because of the fine weather that we ended up getting over the weekend. Nice. But that one was nip and tuck most of the way. I mean, I don't know if a team had more than a 4 or 6 point lead the entire game. It was Owen had a 2-point lead. Of course, Hank hitting a 3/4 court shot right after the buzzer, about to give you a lead after the first quarter, but still just an amazing shot that didn't count. But that's right. I'll take the one they made later in the game. That's okay.
Sure.
But then Owen had, y'all had a 1-point lead at the break. They're at 30-29. And then the second half was more of just a typical Owen Avery. It's like 2 sluggers in a boxing ring. I mean, just throwing haymakers at each other and just really one of those, drag out, knocked. I'm not saying it was a fight or anything. I'm just saying it was just one of those games that was just a battle of attrition at times when you play a team like Owen. And again, able to get the win. Of course, if you would just speak about that win in general, then if you would just address that final play, y'all had a timeout with about 18 seconds left. Y'all drew up a play. Hank got the ball. He had a pull-up jumper from about 15 feet. Owen came down. Asante shot a ball from, I guess, 35 or 40 feet. Fell short. Y'all got the 53-51 win. Can you just speak back and just recollect a little bit about that matchup on Thursday, I should say?
Sure. Yeah. We knew going in that it was going to be a very physical matchup. We said, we've sort of approached the second half of this conference slate kind of as the revenge tour. We've wanted to, we thought that each team we played so far, we were capable of beating, and we weren't playing to our full capability. And so we knew that this was going to be a physical matchup, and, we want to play a physical game. I think that sort of is conducive to the personnel we have. And, it was a fight, and credit to Owen. They've got a very solid ball team. They're tough to beat. Asante is one of the best players in the state, and they got good complementary players around him that make it really difficult. So I credit to them, and also credit to my guys, because I thought they were up to the challenge. I thought every time that Owen did something, they had a response for it. And, they never folded when adversity hit. So I give them a lot of credit for that. And, it was a back and forth affair. And I thought, like I said earlier, I thought Oak did a phenomenal job of guarding Asante, making him really uncomfortable and frustrated, which is what we wanted to do. You got to do something like that when you're going against a really good player like that. And so I thought Oak did a phenomenal job of that. I thought other guys did a phenomenal job in help of when he would drive a gap. There being extra bodies there. Landon Liner's one in particular, I thought did a phenomenal job of jumping out and discouraging the drive and then rotating back to his guy. I'm not necessarily in the business of singling out individual players or anything like that, but I want to give a lot of credit to JJ Washington, who I thought had a phenomenal game in that game. I believe he finished with 8 assists, something along those lines. And just the pace that he plays with, the defensive energy that he plays with. And he's just looking to create looks for other guys and just make guys better around. Nick Daniels, another one, very similar way. Not everything doesn't necessarily always show up in the stat sheet, but just making the guys around him better. And I thought they both gave us phenomenal performances in that game, doing little things that lead to winning. But yeah, the final play of the game, we got exactly, the look we wanted. And, not patting myself on the back on that one. Doesn't really take a rocket scientist to say, hey, let's get Hank Johnson a shot. But, credit to Hank, though. He'd be the first one to tell you he was not having his best game that he's had. He was, having a couple of tough possessions down the stretch, but at the same time, you've got to trust your best players to make big plays in big situations. And so we got exactly the look we wanted. We put them in a ball screen action with some weak side action to sort of take away the help side. And, the only quibble that I would have with the play is that we ran it way too early. I told them to run it with about 7 seconds left on the clock, and I believe we started getting into it with 11 seconds left, which is why Asante had the shot coming back after it. And it's why I was telling my assistants after the game, it's why coaching is like one of the most miserable jobs on the face of the earth, because like I don't have a second to celebrate. I'm not happy because I just know in the back of my mind Asante's going to come back down and he's going to hit that shot at the buzzer, and you just see it coming from a mile away. But fortunately didn't fall. Hank made the big shot that he needed to, and very gritty win. So yeah, credit to my guys, and just hanging tough in a really, really tight situation, getting a big hard fought conference win.
Yeah, you mentioned those guys. You mentioned Nick. He had a big 3-pointer to tie the game there in the fourth quarter. You had Blaine with a bucket there to help keep you a 2-possession lead about midway through the quarter. And Landon, 7 points, had a big jam in that game, had 12 overall rather. I know I see him get a dunk, and I know that was something that fires up the team as well, and the students. Students love it too. So if I can just get them to jump around, I would love to see that. So anyways, that's me. Any students are watching that, please, that's my personal request. Jump a little bit. If something happens to the bleachers, coach will pay for it.
I was going to say the Avery Times has got it, right?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Unlimited resources. But no, a great 53-51 win. So they get y'all up above 500 now, 10-7, I believe. Is that correct on the season? Back to 500 in conference as well. So you still have kind of some of that table laid out before you now going into this coming weekend, weather permitting. We always have to say that. We've got the game at Mountain Heritage, again, that rematch of a 4-point game with the Heritage with the Cougars you had on at home a few weeks back. That'll be down there in Burnsville. And then, of course, the very next day scheduled to go to Hampton for a non-conference game down there in Carter County after having to cancel the one or postpone the game from yesterday. So not had a chance to see them and then have to see them first on their court. So can you talk a little bit through, just under the assumption those games were played, kind of how you guys are going to be preparing to get ready for those two matchups back to back?
Well, priority is going to go to the Heritage game first and foremost, conference game. That's one that we, and that's really tough because we've talked about before how we're really trying to approach it one game at a time. Makes it a little tough when it's back to back like this, but we know what to expect out of Heritage. We know what they bring to the table. It's going to be a tough, physical, hard-fought game, and that's another one that we talk about that we feel like the results should have been different than what it was the first time, and so that's one that very much we're going with the mindset we've got to be mentally prepared to understand that Heritage is going to be ready, so we have to be ready as well. And, play to our full potential, make the shots we're supposed to make, defend like we've been defending. And that's really what's been the difference maker. And I can't preach that enough, is that the defensive effort has got to be what wins us the basketball game. That's one that I expect to be really competitive. And if we show up with the defensive intensity that we've had the past couple of games, then we give ourselves a really good opportunity to win the ball game. If we don't, then that plays to Heritage's favor. So, doing the little things we work on every day, being unselfish with the basketball, playing hard defense, one shot or less every defensive possession, those things will give us a good opportunity to win. Hampton, is a very, very different ball team from what Heritage is. Both very physical teams that are going to play really, really hard, but the way it shows up on the court is very different. Heritage is much more of a half-court team that is looking to use their size. They're looking to work sets in and try to get the shot they want. Hampton is more, actually, it's kind of appropriate that we play Hendersonville next week, not trying to look ahead, but just in comparison, they're a very similar team to Hampton in terms of the style that they play. They're going to press the entire game. They're looking to make it a high-scoring, run-and-gun type game, trying to make you uncomfortable, turn you over. So that'll actually be very good preparation for Hendersonville, who we have coming up next week. And, they're a good ball team. They're a good ball team every year. And that's a game we should be playing every year because, in terms of, proximity, it makes sense. It's good competition for us. So that's one that the guys will be fired up and ready for. But, it all starts with Heritage. We want to come into that game mentally prepared. It makes it really difficult when we're not able to get the practice time in, like has been the circumstance this week. But that's where it's advantageous to have a lot of film on them to be able to go and look at stuff that we've done from our previous game and be able to prepare that way and hopefully be able to get on the practice court sometime before we play that Heritage game.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts running through my mind. First, you mentioned earlier that coaching can be a miserable profession. And I can say it's miserable when you need to get on the practice floor.
Yes.
You need to come together, and you're just physically not able to do that
Right.
just because of weather. So, and I'm glad you mentioned scouting and looking at film. How well do you guys kind of communicate with each other when you have this kind of situation where you're like, okay, what are tendencies you see in the opponent? What are some things we're seeing? How well do they do that with you guys as far as communicating goes when you have these kind of circumstances going on?
Right. I think that I'm probably on my team's last nerve on days like this because we have the team like text chat, and then I have a separate one with my assistant coaches, and I'm constantly sharing stuff on that and like pointing out things. And then as I add, like I have like a scouting playlist that I put together on Huddle, and I'm constantly sharing new updates with that on the team group chat and saying, hey, I've added this, you need to make sure to look at this, text me if there's anything that jumps out to you. I need you to let me know, not because I haven't already seen it, but I want to see what they're seeing and like how they're processing. Right. And same thing with my assistant coaches. I'm constantly asking for new ideas and asking for their perspective on things. And so, yeah, it's difficult when we're away like this to not be able to be on the practice court, but it's also a really good opportunity to grow the mental aspect of it, and because, a lot of these guys are guys that are like very much hands-on type players that need to like walk through it and things like that. So it's good to be able to grow that mental part of processing film and understanding like teams' tendencies and things like that, because being, mentally prepared is just as important as being physically prepared. So really good opportunity to sort of fine tune the detailed stuff mentally so that we can all put that together once we are on the court together.
And how's that playing your contingency if, heaven forbid, this happens? But let's say you have weather come in and you have to postpone the Heritage game. And then being the very next day, you might have to postpone the Hampton game, and then turn around. Your next game is going to be Hendersonville. Surprise. Hey, that's great.
Right.
They show up at your senior night and all the emotion with that after having not played possibly for 2 weeks. what kind of difficulty does that pose if that happens to come to fruition?
I will say this is a good opportunity to make a note of this. I'm not sure if Coach Phillips mentioned this earlier, but so senior night is actually being moved. It is not Henderson. So it is actually going to be, we've rescheduled the Hampton game that we were supposed to play this week to February 9th, and that will be senior night now. So this something to make a note of there. But it's a great question. I think it's where one, it's advantageous to have already played everybody once through so that you do have an idea of what you're facing. And you have film on everybody at this point, so you're able to prepare in that way. And I think this is where it's critical and fundamental to be able to sort of adhere to that mindset of next opponent. That's what's on our mind, whoever's next. And, that way, whoever that may be may shift, but your mindset's still the same, that whatever's next in front of us is the most important thing. And so if it is Heritage, that's great. If it's Hendersonville, great. Hampton, great. Whoever's next is our priority. And, Hampton's a little more obviously the wild card with us not having played them yet, but with the other in-conference foes, that's something that we can sort of apply to whoever's next in front of us. And so, especially up here, you've got to be so adaptable and able to respond because it's kind of a running joke I have with my wife that is I send out every Sunday afternoon, I send out a text to all of my parents and all of my players. That's our schedule for the week, like our practice schedule, game schedule. And I tell her all the time, like, I don't even know why I bother doing it because it's never, I don't believe one time this entire season, it stayed exactly the same as when I sent it. Just being able to adapt and roll the punches. And really that, applies well to a basketball game as well, because, you don't know what's going to happen over the course of the game. You've got to be able to adjust and adapt. So it's good preparation for that. But, what we're trying not to get too high or too low on that. Just right now, the focus is Heritage because that's who's next. If it changes, we'll change with it.
With a back-to-back, you mentioned the focus more on Heritage, of course. But I know coaching staffs that I've spoken to in the past, at times, sometimes the head coach will take on the responsibility of this. Sometimes you split it among the assistants, like scouting teams. Like you might have one assistant ready for this team. You have another assistant with the responsibility of, hey, I need you to scout, like just as this example, coach, I need you to scout Hampton. I need you to check their film out. I need, tendencies from them, offense, defense, what you can bring to the table for us to prepare. Because it kind of helps to divvy up those responsibilities where you don't feel like one group's having to do everything with both games being so close together. Is that the way you want to tackle things, or how does that kind of work for you guys when it comes to? I know it's one game at a time, and I get that, but you still have to do some homework, right?
Sure, absolutely. And that's something we want the players to sort of embrace, but we've got to be constantly preparing. So, the reality of it is, honestly, most of the teams we played, we've scouted way back. Going back to November, like we're getting film early on teams. So, we're adding on to the scouting report and stuff that we've already put together months ago on a lot of these guys. Like I've had a scouting report on Hampton back from when we were going to play them originally. So I believe that was before Christmas, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but we've known what to expect of them from a while. So in terms of delegation, all the coaches have certain responsibilities of what they're scouting. Like, for example, it may be like you said, like I need the offensive tendencies of Hampton. And then for another coach, it's like what defensive stuff is this team running? Can you give that to me? And we sort of do it that way. And I kind of like dividing it where everybody's watching, because I want everybody to have some familiarity with it. So, it's not necessarily a like, hey, you take the Hampton film, you take the Heritage film. It's like, hey, you take these aspects of Heritage, you take these aspects of Hampton, and then we come together. That way everybody's got a familiarity with it when we're ready to play the game. But yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I'm always, no matter how much I trust my staff, which I do implicitly, but like I'm always going to watch myself. Like I've got to. I can't not be prepared myself. So it's very much a team effort though in putting our game plans together.
I don't want to let you go without talking about the JV teams a little bit. Coach Phillips and I spoke earlier at length about the issues involving JV girls basketball. We've talked about it off camera. We actually spent some time on camera talking about it this time, and just think we're going to make Coach Phillips the conference commissioner. I think is where we've been moving toward, because she has some great ideas, great thoughts about what's going on with those programs. But the JV boys fortunate enough to continue to have some games and be able to continue playing in conference. I know they had a setback down at Madison, kind of got behind early in that one, got down, I want to say around 10 points or so, and just really kind of stayed at that level. Wasn't really able to make a big pushback in that matchup, but then able to come up and get a 3-point win at home against Owen on Thursday night. Can you just speak a little bit just about the job that, again, that Coach Farmer and staff, of course yourself included, working with those guys, and just how you're seeing those guys continue to develop in conference play?
Yeah, I think, the kind of the beauty of JV basketball within reason is that, anybody can win night to night. It's going to be a battle every night. And I think that it was just a very unusual, not making excuses, but just sort of looking back on the game, it's a very unusual kind of start. We got there not long before the game began, and, the guys had to dress in the locker room real quick, run on the court, had a couple of minutes to warm up, and they were just not mentally in it from the beginning. I think they were very sort of, I wouldn't say checked out necessarily, but it was just very sloppy in the beginning. They spotted them, I believe it was 15-2 when Case and Lee got hurt at the beginning of the game. It was something along those lines. Thankfully he's okay now, but yeah, very, out of sync early on, and to their credit, kind of battled and held even with them from that point on. But unfortunately, you spot them that many points, you dig yourself in a hole. And I think the message that we keep trying to get through to those guys is just, they've got plenty of fight in them. So sometimes too much fight maybe, but they play really, really hard and really unselfishly. And just getting them to understand that it's a process and that you've got to do things consistently to be able to have success. You can't make a couple of plays and think that's sufficient and that you can sort of check out for a couple of plays. You've got to put a consistent product out there. And, that's tough with young guys, getting them to adjust to that and understand that. But, they're doing a really good job. We're just trying to keep them even keeled emotionally and in terms of their habits and things like that. But, yeah, I think Coach Farmer's doing a phenomenal job of holding those guys accountable and making sure, stressing fundamental things, really getting them to understand sort of the fabric of what we're expecting as a program. So, because that JV, it should be a transitional piece to varsity where those guys, at the end of the year, a couple of them, if they step up and get moved up to varsity for, conference tournament, playoffs, things like that, they're able to step right in and understand how we do things. And, it's an easy adjustment for them, at least in terms of the schematics of what we do. So, yeah, I think that he's done a really good job, and those guys are doing a really good job. They've got some ups and downs, but again, young guys, I like what I'm seeing from them. We just continue to work on that consistency, but I'm very excited about that group. And I think, they've still got a lot of good basketball ahead of them this year. Absolutely.
And this is a question that's loaded. I'll go ahead and tell you that in advance. I feel like it is. But I've asked you deep questions in the past, such as, is it easier to slow a team up or slow a team down or speed a team up?
Yeah.
Is it possible for a team to be too unselfish on the floor? Do you see that at all when you're coaching your guys? And is that something that you have to kind of drill them about? How do you balance that? Again, you might have kids that, versus being a ball hog versus someone who won't take a shot because they want to get so many other people involved. How do you balance that, Coach?
It's tough. I don't think that we have reached that point yet where we're too unselfish. Certainly not calling my guys selfish, but I don't think we've reached that point yet. It's something we work every day. Like our favorite shooting drill we do is the one more drill where it's just working on. It's a simple drill, but it's working just a gap drive, kicking out to the corner and then swinging it to the wing and just working on making that extra pass, which I think is one of the biggest fundamental offensive things you can be good at in basketball, is just creating a good shot through an extra pass. And, unselfish is very much what I want the identity of my team to be. In a perfect world, I would love to have, 6 to 8 guys that are averaging 6 to 8 points a game, but that's also not realistic. You got some guys that are going to get you 20 points a game, et cetera, et cetera. I think in general, just in a very general sense, you can be too unselfish. If you're passing up a wide open layup to kick out to somebody in the corner, that's where you're, almost out thinking yourself. And, obviously you get a wide open layup, you need to take it every single time, unless it's, situation where you need a 3 and the game's winding down, but that's a different story. But yeah, I certainly don't think my team has reached that point yet. I'd like to be able to get to that point where I'm telling them they're being too unselfish, but yeah, in general, I think, in terms of like basketball IQ and things like that, you can almost overemphasize passing the ball where you're passing up open shots. You gotta, if you're a good shooter with an open shot, you need to be able to take it.
Okay. I appreciate the candor. I appreciate it. I know it's, of course, if you're up 5 points and you're trying to run out the clock, well, you don't need to take the layup, pull it back out, right? That kind of thing. Like you're saying, the situational thing.
Yeah.
But boy, when you've got a teenager with a basketball and a chance to score, that can be hard. But it goes back to the IQ aspect. Can you guidance? And you've got a smart team. You've got a team that's got some great IQ. I see that with them.
Sir.
But Coach, I appreciate the time today and just wish you the best of luck. I really hope we get these games in down at Mountain Heritage Friday. That's going to be a rocking night. It's just going, if those games get played on Friday, that will be a fun night. It's be one of those matchups with all 4 games, which we haven't had a lot of those. So I imagine you'll get a pretty packed house, especially considering how close your first matchup was and how the ladies played in the first matchup. Again, the JV teams, I think they were close matchups too. So it'd be a very, very entertaining game. And hopefully Saturday over at Hampton, again, 4 games, you'll get to play JV, get another opportunity there. So excited about that, Coach. We wish you the best of luck. You're on this win streak. Yes, streaking here with 4 in a row. So hopefully continue to see that continue to progress and the revenge tour continue to be successful. And we wish you the best of luck. And we'll catch up with you again, hopefully next Tuesday. Everything works out, weather and everything else permitting. Hopefully at Big Mike's Coffee Shop, which was just a great segue to them. Appreciate their support again. And we missed the coffee today. I know I do. I miss it, not being able to have that. So we'll certainly look forward to trying to be back there next week. Mike and Jackie Nelson, appreciate them using their location, letting us use the location for filming of our coaches shows each week. And also we appreciate again, Kenny Johnson and his staging company and entertainment group. Again, everything from playing the music to setting up the stage to mailing the invites through the postal service to setting up the red lights for pregame to coaching your kids at a young age to get them to learn the fundamentals. He's done everything, and he loves Avery athletics, loves Avery basketball. He's had a vested interest in such a long time working in the youth leagues, and just appreciate all the work that Kenny's done in the past, and appreciate him partnering here with us in this with these coaches shows each week. So once again, please patronize those folks if you get the opportunity. Coach, we thank you. We'll look forward to seeing you hopefully on Friday, fingers crossed, when you all take on the Cougars.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
And thank you so much for watching the Viking Coaches Show for this week.